Let's talk about Braelon Allen. He had 2 touchdowns yesterday. He's 20 years old, the youngest guy in the NFL to do that. I mean, do the Jets now have a 1A and a 1B with Breece Hall and Braelon Allen, or is it still Breece is the number 1 and Braelon's the number 2? What do you think, Zach?
As someone who's covered a decent amount of training camps, Connor too, you kind of feel vindicated when a guy who is very good in training camp translates to the season, because a lot of times you're wrong about guys when they're playing against their teammates every day. And Braelon looks like the guy we saw all summer. And so to your question, I think earlier in the season than I expected, because the Jets usually take their time with the young players, I think he's earned a role. He looks like one of their 3 or 4 most impactful offensive players right now as Mike Williams gets into the groove of things. And they're gonna find ways to get creative with them. They put them both on the field at the same time, which is something they never really did the last couple years. I think they wanted to do that with Dalvin Cook. It never happened. And so you have a guy in Braelon Allen who's a strong runner, much better in the passing game than anybody expected. And they're going to have a hard time keeping him off the field, and that's not a bad thing. Now you can give Breece Hall a breather. And at the end of the season, if they're both healthy, then you have 2 legitimate number 1 running backs playing at the same time. Breece is always going to be the bell cow. They're going to give him the ball, 20 times a game, however many. But if you can get Braelon Allen 5 to 10 touches every week, I think you feel pretty good on offense.
Jeane, the first 2 years of Breece Hall's career when he was on the field, when he came off it, there was no threat. You could just focus on Garrett Wilson. You could focus on whoever. You could pressure the quarterback because you knew that there was no other running back, not Dalvin Cook, not Michael Carter, that was capable of making a play. There was a significant and substantial drop-off from Breece Hall to everyone else. And everyone knew the Jets wanted to feature Breece Hall. And then when he came off the field, it was like, well, okay, we don't have to worry about that anymore. It's to the point now where all eyes are still going to be on number 20 because he is an all-pro caliber player. But what you now have in Allen is a player you have to worry about as well. And when Breece Hall needs a breather, you don't have to give him the ball 40 times a game, even though I know he'd love it. You can give him it 20, keep him fresh throughout the course of the season, and know the snaps that he's not on the field, you're not going to have any bit of a drop-off. But what Zach touched upon, which is something that I did absolutely love, and if anything, it made me say, okay, Nathaniel Hackett, you're starting to piece this thing together. It was the first touchdown that Braelon Allen scored, because what the Jets did was they took Breece Hall, who everyone's going to have their eyes on, and they shot him out right. They pump faked him, and then they came over to Braelon Allen, who made a play and got into the end zone for a touchdown. As soon as Aaron Rodgers looked towards Hall, all eyes went towards Hall. And then he was able to come back and give it to Allen, who went into the end zone. But it's not like they're just giving the ball to someone else. They're giving the ball to a player that can play. And this is something that we have seen from this guy. Zach said training camp. I go all the way back to OTAs when he stepped on the field, when Breece Hall wasn't working because the Jets were still working him back from some off-season stuff that he was working through with some minor injuries. Braelon Allen got rep after rep after rep. Not Izzy Abataconda, who was there last year. It was Allen. And there were so many times in OTAs and then in minicamp where you just turned your head and said, that guy looks like he can play a little bit. That guy looks like he can play a little bit. Whether it was catches, whether it was runs, you were just consistently seeing this guy flash. Constantly. And then it continued to training camp. It continued into the preseason with those 2 physical runs he had in the opener. And now we're seeing it into the regular season. And it is such another weapon, because what the Jets want to do is be led by their ground game. I know Garrett Wilson, I know Mike Williams working his way back, I know Aaron Rodgers, but they want to be a team that imposes their will on the ground, brings those safeties into the box because you have to stop Hall, now you have to stop Allen, and then they can attack deep. We haven't seen that before because it was always one player you had to key on. Now when you have 2, it's just waves. We talk about the Jets' defensive line, right? Waves of pass rushers. The Jets now have it with a run game where you get tired chasing around Breece Hall, you get a little worn down, you're trying to catch your breath. Now you have the big physical back and Allen come down to break you apart. It reminds me a little bit back when the Giants were good way long ago, and they had the combination of Ahmad Bradshaw and Brandon Jacobs. Brandon Jacobs would just bully you and beat you down for 2 or 3 quarters. Then they'd bring in Ahmad Bradshaw, and he would be shifty and run all around. The Jets kind of have the reverse of it, where you're getting tired of chasing a guy down, and now you got to deal with the big physical presence of Allen. It's a tremendous situation for this offense to be in, and we're just seeing it in its infancy stages. It's only going to get better and better as the season goes on.
And it's crazy because he's only 20 years old. I mean, This guy plays as if he's been playing forever, and then you get him in front of that line. I think he made the comment, like, my Nana could run through that. Yeah. I mean, you add that with the line, it's kind of crazy what these 2, the killer bees, can do.